So very good afternoon to dear all the participants. I think I am audible to all of you. So today with us, architect Jit Kumar Gupta ji. He is a well-renowned architect of Chandigarh, and he has been worked at different positions. And because of we are having some of the participants from rural development and Panchayati Raj Tamil Nadu, we specially requested him because he is the best person who can who can tell you about the planning and not only in the urban areas but also in the rural areas also, and what is the smart city concept, how we can develop not only urban areas but rural areas also, because our most of the population lives in rural areas, and we need a lot of intervention. So especially because of your request, we have requested Jeet Kumar Gupta ji, and I am very thankful to him that he accepted our request at a very short notice. And I hope that all the participants will enjoy that lecture. And for the information of Jeet Kumar Gupta ji, we are having participants of AE level, SDO level, JE levels, and few academicians also, from different states, and scientists from CSIO, and some of the participants are Punjab Police Housing Corporation, and few participants are from UT Chandigarh, and few are from Tamil Nadu. So
Okay.
thank you so much, sir, and over to you. You're kindly requested to start your presentation. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Guruji. Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible, please?
Audible, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Perfect.
Audible, sir.
If you could do the slideshow mode.
I can do it full, no problem. Okay. It's
Yes, sir.
okay?
Yes,
It's
absolutely
okay?
fine, sir. Fine, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you.
sir. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I think you had a very long and very fine session right in the morning. That was on the green and landscaped area and the role and importance of the greenery in cities and the human life. And let me tell you, we are at a very, very lower end of the greenery. There are only 29 trees per person in India as compared to 10,400 trees in Canada. You can think of 29 trees per person in India, and there are 10,400 trees in Canada. And you can think of 300, more than four, I would say 400 times, the number of trees, and we are at a very lower end. And we have to understand a tree, basically generates 7 cylinders of oxygen per day. And each cylinder costs 300 rupees and 2100 rupees cylinder. Oxygen you get free. It does air conditioning equivalent to 5 tons of ACs, So that is the question and the importance of the trees. And we say, we as a human being need oxygen, and the tree needs carbon dioxide for their survival. So there is inherent relationship between the human beings and the tree. What you need, trees are producing. What you are producing, tree is needing, So trees are basically like Shiva. They are absorbing all muck and all carbon which we generate, and they give you all oxygen so that we can survive. But nevertheless, in the context of the smart cities, the topic I will be having will be the housing basically. And that too, with a focus on something on affordable housing. Let me talk to you, the housing. We all say, there are 3 basic necessities of life: food, shelter, and clothing. Food and clothing you can produce anywhere, you can transport anywhere. But question remains with the housing, That necessity of life has to be localized, has to be a particular place, has to be space, position specific, and involves lot of time and money for its production. And accordingly, that remains one of the most difficult area, not only in the developing countries, but also in the developed country, provide an appropriate shelter. And housing remains one of the most critical element of human living. But nevertheless, looking at the legal aspects, housing is a state subject, and all the state governments have the power to legislate. But I think this is not still a fundamental right. You can own any property anywhere, but you cannot ask for a house as a fundamental right. Looking at the context of the housing, we have to understand the role and importance of housing in human life, beside those I said three basic necessities of life. And we should understand housing is the major determinant of quality of life. It provides you security, safety, dignity, and identity to human living. So every man, you don't have any identity. First thing, when you go anywhere, you have to establish. They ask you, you give your proof of residence. So unless and until you do not have a house or permanent address, you will not be able to prove your identity, number one. Number two, you will not be able to achieve benefits of large number of government schemes, which have been launched. You will not be able to have a passport. You will not be able to have, even your uh, I card or PAN number, or, this voter I card. So that's what the importance of housing has been in the society. And everybody, ultimately, when you retire, what are you working for? That before, you retire, you must have a house of your own, so that you can go and peacefully live therein. And if you look at the cities, majority of the built up area comprises of the housing. Largest number of units in a city are the housing stock. And largest area of the city is occupied by the residential component. It goes around 30 to 40%. If you totally calculate all other areas under commercial, under institutional, other, under healthcare, under trade and commerce, they even collectively do not match with the area the housing has in this city, not in terms of only in numbers, but also in terms of the area and the built up space. So that shows, the personality of a city is clearly determined by the personality, the kind of housing it has. And you can see, the quality of life in a city is all determined by the quality of housing which it provides. When you look, in addition to its human connotation, social connotation, this housing has economic connotation and employment connotation. And I said there are 290 industries which are involved in producing products which are used in housing. 1/6 of the total workforce is involved in the building of the this built sector. So that means it is also provider of the largest employments, large provider of the larger uh, industrialization. And it is said 9% of the total wealth is ultimately generated by the this housing sector. So housing in totality is known to have physical, social, economic, and environmental connotation. And that's why all cities, all governments, they have highest priority that housing for all should be provided. Even the government of India has, launched the PAM, Prime Minister Awas Yojana, both urban and rural, and they're trying to make sure by 2022, when India becomes 75 years after independence, every person must have a built up house. But housing is a commodity which is never static, and it is one which is never, fulfilled in terms of the demand and supply. There is always demand chasing the supply, and it is always in devolution, because of the number of people adding every day, and it is said in India 1,85,000 people are migrating and globally, to the cities. That means after every 5 days, you need one metropolis to be provided in globally to accommodate those kind of urban increase in population. In India, of course, we are adding around about uh, 2 crores of people every year, and out of that you can say 1 crore is being added in urban area, 1 crore is added in the rural area. And you can think of, 1 crore people means 8 to 9 lakh people are being added, and all, if you take half of the people who will be, migrants and other, they will be needing housing, and you can see the quantum of housing required is how much. Looking at the entire context of the housing, looked at what are the status of housing in the different country and how people are living, and that's ultimately they came to the conclusion, that people are having a very, very bad kind of situation so far housing is concerned. And that's what they, made a declaration in 1976 and then 1988, that every person must have a right to adequate housing, and that's what they say. Could the nation accept this kind of agenda that everybody must have a housing? For the reason, they have a Department of Housing and Urban Development. Government of India has a ministry dedicated to Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, and then there are agencies like housing and housing boards, there are urban development authorities, there are improvement trusts, there are large number of agencies which are involved both at the, in the parastatal as parastatal agencies, and also as, the other things, so that the housing gets a priority. So accordingly, the government also launches the policies and programs. You have housing policies drawn by different time and program, which I was telling you, the housing Prime Minister Awas Yojana, they are all, but primarily in the case the government are committed to provide housing for all, So that is what they say. If the governments are committed, then government, must expect, they should accept that housing should be made as a matter of right, and they say, the government should be concerned about that they provide adequate housing to everybody, and housing is, that right to housing is safeguarded, rather than, the housings are being destroyed or they are being damaged. I said housing is primarily and essentially the product of the human growth and development. Right when we came on this earth about 2 lakh, more than 2 lakh years, first thing man tried to do was search was for the shelter, So he started living in caves, and started living sometime in trees, But ultimately, the agriculture, when agriculture became permanent, they started building they started colonizing, I would say, and that's, the birth of the human civilization when living in these settlements. So ultimately, agriculture remains one of the genesis on which the human settlements have grown in terms of the fixed place and in terms of quality of building which have been added. And it is said, that India, we were 1.21 billion people in the year 2011, and it is said during last 100 years, our population has increased 5 times. India's urban population has increased 15 times, whereas rural population has increased only 3.5 times. Urbanization level has gone, 4 times, and number of cities have also increased. Number of cities have increased 4 times, whereas urbanization level has gone only 3 times, So we are looking at, that the cities are gaining more, they are getting powerful because more and more people are migrating. And it is said the UNO has estimated by 2050 India will have half of the population living in urban area, half in the rural area. That means the population will be 1.6 billion by that time, and we will be the most populated country in the world. And out of that, 800 million people will be living in urban area, 800 million will be living in rural area. And you can think of, if India is now 38 million, 378 million, there will be another urban India added in the next 30 years, and that's what the context remains, and after 2050 the rural population will start declining and the urban population will start increasing. This is how the globally the different cities are, and we are number two to China, both in urban and rural population. But in 2036, we'll take over China and will be the most populated city, country in the world. So when we're looking at the cities, they remain important, they remain important because they are housing more population, they are giving more employment, they are having large investment, they are more infrastructure and services, and they are the, determinant of prosperity, growth, and development of a country, So that's what the context of the urban area remains. But the urban area are known, that despite their distinct advantages, they are also known to be, have storehouse of problems because they are poorly managed and governed. They are unable to meet the urban challenges. There is a haphazard and unplanned development. There is a concentration of poverty, slums. There is a quality of life is very poor for the majority of the people, and cities are not able to meet the basic needs of shelter, services, land, water, and sanitation. And if you look at the Indian cities, the Indian urbanization is called urbanization of population, poverty, and pollution. Let me also tell you, unfortunately, there are two civilizations. One is I don't say, there was Indus Valley civilization, there are Roman civil, or there are Babylon or Nile Valley civilization. I know there are only now two civilizations. Either this is urban civilization or there are rural civilization. Urban civilization is all artificial. Rural civilization is a natural civilization. But you find the urban areas are gaining prosperity, they are giving authority, they are in prominence because everything, the wealth is produced from that portion. But still, despite they being more wealthy, they being more productive, they have all best of the healthcare and services facilities, etc. They remain, I would say, bedridden with large number of problems, and the problems are have their genesis that there is a neglect of the rural areas. In fact, it's a rural poverty which is migrating to urban area. Unless and until if we are not able to look at the rural area, if we are not able to take care of the rural area, if we are not able to stop our people coming migrating from rural to urban area, if we don't give them proper employment, proper livelihoods, and if we do not take care of the urban wealth, rural wealth, urban area are going to be in crisis, and basically the crisis of, basically you can say, the crisis of housing, crisis of infrastructure, crisis of services. Let me also explain to you. We say there are a lot of slums in the city, there are a lot of poverty in the city. But let me also explain to you, the poverty is not a urban problem. Poverty is not a rural problem. Poverty is a human problem. It's a human problem, unfortunately. And poverty remains the major curse. And if you find more, slums, more these kind of people living without infrastructure, it is because poverty is getting concentrated in these cities. That remains the issue, So ultimately, we have to find ways and means how we can overcome this problem of poverty. But nevertheless, we have to look after our village. If we don't look after our villages, I think our village cities can never be a rational area. They can never be smart, They can never be livable area because I said they are two civilizations. They are two sides of the coin. We cannot, live on other by the neglecting of the other. So they have to, their energies will have to synergize. Their problem have to be looked collectively. They have to support one another, They have their role and importance in the human living, and they have to their job collectively, etc. So when we look at this, the governments have been doing, the governments have been, looking at the context of the housing right from the beginning, and they have been doing a lot of programs. There are a number of programs which have been launched, for providing the housing. And as a government people, how the government has been providing housing right from sometimes they were giving plots, sometimes they were giving plant area, sometimes they are making you built up houses. So there are large program, where the government is intervening so that everybody has a house, And there are national, I said this is state subject. The government of India can only frame policies, program, and they can fund it out. But all the work has to be done at the state, local level, at the city level, at the state level. So therefore, they are doing their, they have to evolve their own agenda and make sure those policies are implemented at the ground level. So first national housing policy, all the three policies which have come into in this country, they have promoted one agenda only, that is housing for all. That means everybody must have a house. And in first policy, the government said we'll provide the housing, and we will provide adequate housing supported by amenities. By 1994, the government of India understood, the task is so huge, the cost is so huge, the money involved is so huge that government will not be able to do this entire thing. So therefore, I think we have to look for other option, and we have to involve the private sector and let the government role be not of the provider but also the facilitator, and creating an environment in which other players can come and they can contribute. The last policy, the earlier two policies looked at both housing in urban and rural sector. But in the case of 2007 housing policy, this only looked at the urban area, where they said that the agenda, of course, was same, and they said we will provide housing for all in the urban area. And in this area, what they were trying to do was that the government role will be confined to EWS and LIG, whereas a poor this the private sector will look after the other part of the housing. But the government of India was also trying to involve the private sector in the affordable housing. But nevertheless, there was multi-pronged strategy which has been put out to make sure that everybody gets a house in the both cities and the towns, But when looking at the house, and unfortunately in India, you do not know what is the shortage. There are no figures, there are no data, All the data, they are all basically manipulated data, And their data, it's so very difficult, to collect the data, except, you get certain data from the census of India, which record whether this building is a, kacha or pakka, they have a roof, what kind of roof they are. Even the, people who record this they do the census, they don't have an idea what kind of house. They just ask you and they record it. But if you factually ask what is the shortage of housing, nobody will be able to precisely tell you what is the shortage at the local level, at the village level, or state level, or the national level, because the picture remains very very hazy and there is no data. But nevertheless, whatever the figures were, government of India, they always constitute a technical group too. In the Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation, that was now in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, and that technical committee, they came to the conclusion that in the by the end of the 10th 5-year plan, the housing shortage, urban housing shortage, was 24.71 million. 2.47 crore घरों की जरूरत थी, as against total of 6.63 crore housing which was existing in this, and the shortage was large shortage as well in the EWS, 88%, 11% in the LIG, whereas in MIG, if you cumulatively EW and say LIG, say 99% shortage falls in that category, that's the lower end of the pyramid, whereas MIG and HIG shortage are less than 1%, and this is what the focus will be, that more and more EWS housing and LIG housings are provided. And this was the range at that time the technical group went into and came to this conclusion that India has a total shortage of housing stock by one third of that, out of 66, 24.71 million housing shortage is required to be provided. And then we can see it was the highest in the case of EWS, further lower in LIG, and minimum was MIG and HIG. And they said by the by 2012, end of the 11th century, this 11th 5-year plan, the shortage will go up to 26.53 million, despite addition of number of housing, And then when they came to the, looking at the states, what kind of shortage are, they found there are 10 states which accounted for 75% of the total shortage. Then the largest shortage was found to be in the UP, where it was around 3 million housing was, 30 lakh housing shortage was found to be there. Next was Maharashtra, West Bengal, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Bihar, Rajasthan, and Karnataka. They are the other state which had the kind of population, the shortage of housing. On one hand, there is a shortage of housing. People are not getting housing. On other hand, as per census, the houses are locked, they are vacant. People are not renting it out. And you can think every 10,000 Delhi is locked, In Mumbai also. In Calcutta, of course, they are lucky, every 16th is there. But if you look at the figure in Pune, every sixth house is locked, People are not renting it out because they know, the moment you rent it out, you will only be, basically collecting rent, whereas you will the landowner, the tenant will become the owner itself. So that is because of the laws, Rent Control Act, which are favoring the tenants, and that's what people are not there. Of course, people have 2 or 3 houses. People are going to hill area. They are having housing. Rich people, for enjoyment, etc. Those can't be, of course, rented out. But majority of houses constructed by the people, that is not being let out simply for the reason that they have, or they're afraid of getting into litigation, and that's what, when you don't have housing, when you are not getting, rented house on a proper, this, I would say, paying money, and when they are become affordable, you have no other option but to squat and to go out, And why people, people who are migrating from rural area to urban area, they are not migrating for living, they are migrating for making a living. And that's, please understand, there's a difference between living and making a living, And they are forced to do that. They don't have money, How can they rent out anything? So whatever thing they will get, whatever place they get, they try to create their own shelter. And that is what the census says. Every sixth in the urban area, urbanite, lives in the slums itself. In 2001, India had, 5.23 crore people living in slums. In 2011, they became 6.54 crore. There was a growth of 25% of the slum population. And this is the towns, in 2001, there were 1,743 towns which reported the slums, whereas in 2011, it basically they 50% increase. And I think by next 2021, when we have this next year, when the census, you will find this figure will be covering practically all the cities of the country. And if you look at their role and importance and their position in the society, they say 60% urban area, if they contribute 60% of the wealth, the informal sector, these all these businesses which are carried on the street and on the footpath, they contribute about 8% of the wealth of that. That means out of 100 crore 100 rupees generated as Indian wealth, 4.5 रुपया जो है, they are being done by this informal settlement, and they say these we have seen these slum areas are growing as compared at the rate of 6% as compared to 3.4% the normal growth of urban area. And you can see, in Vishakhapatnam, around half of the population is living in slum, 44.1. Next is Jabalpur, and Mumbai has 41%, Vijayawada has 40%. You can see, the total is 1/6. That means every 6% is living in slums. This is, the picture of Delhi. And Delhi, the slum people, they are they constitute 30% of Delhi population, and they are occupying only 3% of Delhi area. Whereas LBZ, Lutyens Bangalore Zone, where the president and the New Delhi is located, that has 3% of Delhi area, but only 1% of the Delhi uh, population. Whereas car parking even occupy 10% of Delhi area, whereas the slum are having only 3% of the area. So you can see, this is how the slum are, what kind of material they have, how they are planned, what kind of open spaces they have. You can clearly see, well, this is the scenario. This is Bombay Dharvi, next to the airport, and you see you have beautiful multi-story building, you have beautiful airport, but you have the largest slums which have more than 1 million population, 10 lakh, more than 10 lakh population living an area of hardly 3 square kilometer. You can think of this is another look at this Dharvi, and this is how they have the problem during the rainy season or whenever there are floods. They are the most one impacted, and this is the Chennai slums, which are facing the rain problem. How they live. Then ultimately, if these are the issues, then ultimately what are the options available? We're looking at, we have to provide them housing, but housing, as we know, is both resource intensive, money intensive, labor intensive, and cost intensive, and that's all the four, things are formidable for the people who have no money. So they are trying to define, if at all we want to provide housing, what are the factors which we must be taken out in order to provide the house, making the housing affordable housing. They say how the affordable housing has to be defined in three parameters: the parameter of income, how much the money person earns, the family earns. Secondly, that how much, what is the area which you can provide. Third is what affordability he has. Normally, they say 30 to more, not more than 30 to 40% of your total money must go into the other than housing. If you spend more than that, that means you are compromising on something else, and that means you are neglecting your family and you are getting into a crisis. In America, they have only one thing, one parameter, and they say the day you start spending more than 30% of total income on housing, surely that means you are stressed and you need a sport and you need a affordable housing. So in the PAMA, what they are saying that EWS should be 30 square meter of carpet area and LIG should be 60 square meter of area. Income should not increase between 3 lakh rupees per year and 6 lakh rupees for LIG. And these houses must be Pakka structure, they may be in device independent or they may be in multi-story, and they should have all the amenities like toilet, water, and electricity. That makes a housing affordable. So affordable housing. When you look at what are the issues involved in the affordable housing, we say issues. What are issues means? What are the factors which are prohibiting in providing the housing? I'll go by one. The lack of ability. That's the land remains major issue. So what are you looking at when you are looking at a housing? You require land, you require money to buy land, or construct housing, material, technology, huh? And then you would require labor. You have people who are designing and constructing. They are all needed for construction of housing. But remains, let's understand that the first and foremost thing is that you have to have a land. If you don't have a land, you can never have a house, because house is to be built on a land. And let me also explain to you that so far as land is concerned, India remains in crisis. We have 1/6 of the world population, but we have only 2.4% of the land. You can think of how God has not been, I would say, doing justice to India, for the reason, if we have 17.7% of population, we must have the global land, 1/6 of the land of the world. But we have only 1/40th of the land of the world. You look at China, where India has 32 lakh square kilometer of land. China has around, 97 lakh square kilometer. Of course, we are parallel to China in population, but they have 3 times more land. Look at America, they have 3 times more land, same as China, but they have 1/4 of the population. That means they have only 33 crore of population. They have 96 lakh square kilometer of area. So they are 12 times better, And there are no country in the world which is so badly stressed in terms of the land. We have the lowest land-man ratio there. And so as a professional, I am trying to request you, please look at land and very carefully. We have to respect the land. It's not a commodity which is to be treated for sale and purchase. It is basically gift of a god, and it is have to be revered like that. So it has to preserve, conserved, promoted, protected, and used in an optimum manner. So ultimately, when you are having any kind of, program or project, first and foremost thing will be how to minimize the use of land, how to minimize the diversion of land from the agriculture to non-agriculture uses. That should remain one of the major issue. Since the land, there are too many people, there are too less land, there's a lot of pressure, land prices are rising, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of things going on. If you want to be rich, I have only one advice to you: purchase a small piece of land anywhere in a favorable location in an urban area, and you can be sure, you will never be poor in your life. So whatever you earn in by 30 years of your service to the government, you will earn more than what you will get from that sale of that one piece of land. That is the issue. Because of that speculation we are going through, and land being treated as a commodity. So land remains the first and foremost thing. And basically, land is urban land remains perpetually short and unaffordable because of the high costs. Then housing, when you are looking at housing for the poor, there is very limited land, or I would say in majority of the city, no land is marked for the poor. Only in the government scheme we say that you have to, if you have to get the approval, you have to keep so much area reserved for the EWS housing. That's the only way. It's a plots which are going 20% in some states and 5% in some other area. But you can see how much is the planned development. People are not doing the planned development, and that's what, you have very little land available for housing. That government has a lot of charges on housing itself. So that is number. Then we are looking at the cost of housing, which is rising because of the building material, because of the labor and transportation. The housing cost goes on increasing, and one component of that increase is contributed by the government, because government charges so many, levies so many charges and fees that increase to around 25 to 30% of the cost of the house. And that's what you see. If there's a project, you pay change of land use, you pay money for the approval of land, approval of the layout plan, building plan approval, then internal development charges, external development charges, then you pay for the registration of the land, then you pay for the registration of the house, and there are so many, fees which are to be paid to municipality and other agencies by the government, Then, on the other hand, you have a master plan, and master plans are so rigid that they control the entire land. They are not promoter of development, they are controller of development, and they put restriction, they earmark, this is residential area, this is commercial area, this is industrial area, this is institutional area, and they do not know, industrial area is increasing somewhere else, they have marked somewhere else, residential area going somewhere else, and the residential area is marked somewhere else, and there are no marking for poor class housing, and that's what, those lands are not available, and that creates a problem for the affordable housing. Then we have a bylaws, they have, they prescribe lower FAR, lower height. That means you cannot optimally utilize the housing at this land, and that means you have few number of houses built on the same plot. If the FAR is low, that means the cost per unit of land will go very, very high on the individual housing. So if the FAR is more, that means there are more built up houses in the same land, and that means per capita cost of the land will go down, So they are irrational bylaws. Then the project time, it takes a lot of time, and it said that minimum 16 to 24 months are used up in just getting approval from the government, for the housing project. And this is because there are a large number of government agencies involved, offices involved, and there are repetition, and then there are so many rules and regulation. Then you run here from one place to another, and that's what they lead to a lot of complication. And that once the project is delayed, and delay means you are paying up the higher cost, then there is less availability of housing finance for the poor kind of people, because for that they need a security, they need a address, they need a assured income, which very few of them have, and that's what they don't have access to the money provided by the government. Then there I said money multiplicity of agencies and law, and they said this is a study which made by KPMG and NARIDCO, that for getting a project approved, the file moves from one table to another, and the tables counted are 150, and there are 40 departments which are involved, and the central, state, and local bodies which for before the project is given. And then I said Rent Control Act remains one of the key issue which prohibit people, because it favors the tenant rather than the owner, and that's what this leads to, people not letting it out. Then private sector, they are only interested in making money. They will go on MIG and HIG and MIG. They are not interested in EWS. So that's what, the private sector don't get into that kind, because they doesn't make profit. They don't make profit, Then you can see the technologies and the method remains outdated. They are all manual. That is all on site, and that leads to a lot of problem. Of course, we have made lot of progress so far as infrastructure is concerned. Like we have bridges, which are built somewhere else, and they're transported and they're done. You have highways coming up, you have over bridges, underpasses. They're all built. In technology term, you have lot of in technologies which are brought in. But in case of housing, there are very limited and very few technology which have been used, and that means the project lingers on, and that there is a lot of wastage, in terms of when you do the on-site construction. In fact, when you have to, make a cost effective, you have to graduate not from construction of the house, you to go to the manufacturing of the house. Houses are being manufactured somewhere else in the factory, they are transported and just put in there. That's the only way you can meet the huge demand and gap between the demand and supply. That's what we have to change our approach from constructing on site, from construction to manufacturing. That will be thing. But I think you have to look at the cost. What is a cost? There are two costs basically for every building. One is the life cycle cost, other is the initial cost. And we are all looking at the initial cost. Whenever you do a construction, you look at the three aspects. Number one, that the building has to be. That's what every owner has. That if he comes to you, please build my. I want to construct my building. First, the three things he says: my building should be constructed of the best quality. Then he says you take the minimum time. And third, he says it should cost a minimum. Cost, time, and this quality. There remains three major issues, but they are a triangle. If you ask for one, there are two opposite. If you are asking lower the cost, you are two opposite. That means you have to compromise with quality. You will have to give more time. So, but whenever you do a project, please don't look at the initial cost. Look at the life cycle cost, because a building is going to cost sometime, last beyond our lifetime. So we can't look at initially what has been done and what building will do after it put into operation and it is occupied. We have to look for both. And best is, if you want to want a project to be basically rational and cost effective, you have to look at the life cycle cost. So initial cost is what? Cost which goes in the land, construction, everything what you do before occupation. But what is the life cycle cost? It's the initial cost plus cost of maintenance and cost of operation. What you pay for electricity bill, water bill, AC bills, etc. They are all there. So initial cost and life cycle cost. So please, if you want the building to be, a house to be really affordable, it's not affordable construction, it is affordable living ultimately. You have to provide for. That means the person should be able to have its reduced bill for electricity, water supply, maintenance of the building, so that building doesn't break and doesn't, you may cost less initially. But if every 5 years he has to replace some place or other, then I think the house becomes unaffordable. So that's what we say. Please look at the life cycle cost of the building. And this is what the analysis is. The initial cost is hardly 10%. Maybe, if these are figures which are intentionally worked out, you can say maybe, 10 to 15 or 20%, but still maintenance and operation cost remains around 70 to 90%. So therefore, you don't look at the 10% cost, you look at the 90% cost also, if the house has to be basically maintained as the affordable, etc. So what is the option available? Whatever issue we sought, we have to look at those issues and we have to overcome that kind of issues. So first thing is that we said land remains the major issue. So ultimately, what are you trying to do is that we want land market to be more efficient. That means more land should be made available at affordable cost, so that the cost of the housing can be reduced. Number two, you should be able to permit the construction of the housing on the periphery of the city, on the nearby area where the land costs are less, so that, but there are services, infrastructure, and transport available that can also reduce this cost of the land. Then you are providing a single window clearance. That what I was talking, 16 to 24 months. No, I think within 1.5 month of the project, submission, you should be able to give the approval for that. Then you make higher FAR, but that means there are higher FAR means there are more built up area, more number of houses, less cost land per unit, and that means the building will be more this cost effective. So therefore, you grant additional FAR. You look at the bylaws, which prohibit the basically you're restricting more houses to be constructed. In addition, you can have creating land bank. Why? Because land is not available and people are searching land. If the government can create a land bank, where land is available and they have all the clearances, all government, clearances there, and only things person has to get the building the layout plan prepared and building plan prepared, the work can be started very quickly, and this can add to the efficiency and the addition of the housing stock. This has been done in the West Bengal, where the Bengal Housing Board entered into contract with companies like Ambuja, Peerless, etc., where the contribution of the government housing board was in terms of land, whereas the money was being provided for construction by the private parties. So government, the housing board provided basically the land as the component for 49% share, 51% share came from the, the private developer with whom they made the agreement, and the number of housing stock was created in a very, very short time, and in, best quality, and in the shortest possible time, involving best of the technology in Calcutta. Then you can have, basically you have to have strong project and cost management. In the large projects, you have to be very clear that project management and cost management remains two very important issues. Number one, if you are able to meet the deadline, that means you are able to finish the project within the specified time and within the specified budget. I think nothing, it can't, there can't be better than this. And so strong project and cost management, it has seen, it can cut down the cost of construction by 10 to 15% minimum, Then, if you are doing large number of houses, don't have variable design, have one design, have standardization, have, the building components standardized. That's what they did in Chandigarh when they did large housing, when Chandigarh came up for the government employees, So everything, right from door to the roof, to the window, everything was finalized and standardized and was produced on the mass scale. And that's what they were able to maintain the quality as well as maintain the speed of the construction and also the cost also. Then you need state of art technologies. There are a lot of technology which are now available based on the local material and the industrial waste, and you can cut down the cost. So then if you are doing a project, please make sure what are the important component of which is the most important component, like cement, sand, bricks, or tiles, etc., what you want to have. So in that case, right in the beginning of the project, if you tie up with the suppliers, that means the producer direct, you are getting from there, that this will be the price you will be paid, and in case it get less, they will reduce it, but in case it becomes higher, you will not pay it. That means you are assured of this. Number one, the supply of the crucial material. Number two, the cost, there will be no escalation. And number three, if there is anything which is a reduction, you get the benefit of that, in the life cycle, and you will find that you will be able to do the complete the project in specified time and specified budget. And then it is said, the project should be of enough magnitude. That means it must be 1,000 to 1,500 number of units, which can bring economy, because one or two unit cannot bring in economy. Then government has to rationalize its levy and charges to reduce it, to make the housing affordable. You have to have a project approach. If you are doing only EWS housing, you will never be able to achieve economy, because there's a cross subsidization involved, And cross subsidization means you have HIG, MIG, LIG, and EWS categories, which are all there, So HIG, HIG, MIG, you are free to sell at the market rate, but EWS and LIG, you have to sell at the fixed rate, So if you add the commercial area also, commercial area is able to generate a lot of money, and you will be able to subsidize. And initially, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, etc., they have been able to subsidize the EWS housing even to the extent of 40 to 45% by levying charges on the commercial development or high-end development or LIG or MIG or HIG category of housing. If you approve the single window clearance, and I said the time for approval will become very, very less, and you will be able to complete the project in within the given time and with money. If you make those green building, that means you are cutting down on the cost of the electricity and the water. The bills will be less. You will be able to provide optimum living condition, and you will find the house will become affordable. Of course, architectural design remains very, very relevant. The structural design remain very, very relevant. So accordingly, the architects have to be very, very careful and very focused. And similarly, engineers who are involved, they have to adequately support and guide the architect, in terms of the size of the room, structure, in terms of spans and the material to be used, so that you have maximum prefabricated unit component which are used, and you can surely cut down the time, you can cut down the wastage, you can cut down the supervision, you can cut down the manpower, and you can of course have prefabrication as one of the method for producing large standardized component which can be brought and produced somewhere else, brought it and then just put on the housing this site itself. So I'll always please make sure that always use locally available material, because the God has been the greatest architect. He has given material there. Those material exist for thousands of years. Why they exist? Because they are most appropriate and most suitable. So if you use the local material, that means you don't have to transport, And please you make sure that you use material in the natural form, So if you go to Chandigarh, when the Kabuzir came, they have huge building made of concrete, etc. But they never plastered that concrete. The moment you plaster the concrete, that means you will have to paint it. Once you paint it, that means every 3 4 years you will have to paint it. And if there's a, this painting is to be done outside, exposed in the area, you can think of what will the consequences if you had to paint every year the High Court, the Assembly, and your Secretariat. What would have been the cost of the government? I think government would have bankrupt, or the building would have been as shabby as they have been, without any this maintenance and upkeep. So they were very wise. They made sure they said use the local material, use in the natural form only basically. If you are in interior, then you can paste it. Otherwise, if you have brick, let the brick be exposed. If you have a stone, let the stone be retained on their natural form, and you will find things will be very, very cost effective. Then you have to have a cooperative approach where all the members contribute and they work together to achieve that housing. And cooperative housing has been very, very successful. But then you have to treat affordable housing as a volume game, not a profit game. You are not going to make much money, but you have to make sure that houses are built in the most cost-effective manner in 18 to 24 months, and during the construction itself, before they are completed, they are all sold off. So you are not saying that you are going to retain the houses and make money. So please treat affordable housing as a volume game, not as a profit game. Then you have to be very clear. You find people, those who are going in the affordable housing, they are always perpetually short of money. What they do, once they get the house ownership, they try to sell off and get away. They run away and they start living in slums, because for them money is more important, because they have been living, for them quality of life has real meaning, not very big meaning. They have been living earlier, they can live now, but money will never come, and that's what they in Bombay, when they gave 225 square feet of flat to everybody, and the people who are living in slums, after 2 years when they did the survey, about 85 to 90% of the flats were sold off, and they were living people like doctors or engineers or architects. They were living because in Bombay the cost was very, very high, and those people were living. So the moment you give, the right to them, that I think will create a crisis. So ultimately, a strategy will be right to shelter, but not right to ownership. Please, we understand every human being for dignity need a house. So right to shelter should be accepted, but right to ownership should not be accepted. Because you make somebody owner, the man will sell and go away. That's the tragic part, Then you don't have to look at, you are going to give a constructed house to everybody. Don't think, no, everybody doesn't need it, because there are people for different reason here, Somebody come to study, somebody come to, part-time rickshaw going, somebody is doing for a temporary job, So ultimately, you don't have to provide a permanent house, You will have to look at, you have to have number of options available for them based on what is the affordability, what is the family size, what is the shelter requirement, what is the marital status, what is the job he does, what is the skill and tenure in the house. So therefore, there will be night shelter, there will be mobile housing, there will be bachelor single accommodation, there will be rental housing, there should be transit accommodation, you can create hostels, etc. So there are number of options you should be able to provide so as to meet the housing demand. You are not creating ownership, or you are not here to create millionaires, You are only make sure that those people who are living in ultimately have adequate shelter. So ultimately, then also we will see that don't give them plot, give them the built up houses. The moment you give them the plot, they don't have money to construct, or they cannot borrow money from the for construction. Ultimately, they do what, they just sell the land and go away. So have only the built up houses. So, and instead of plotted development, have a flatter development, so that you have number of flats more constructed on the same land, and you can have more people absorbed who don't have the house. Then we have to be very careful. You have seen in most of the cases, housing have been constructed in a land, because land remains very, very critical. In villages, you have seen all these EWS housing has been constructed on the village land, and the common land, and the common land is far off. So all scheduled caste people, they have been put on, in a corner. And earlier they were part of the society of the village. Now they get a plot, and they can be clearly located, and they are totally segregated from the city. This, or in most of the cases, people don't even shift. That's what in case in around lot of houses which have been constructed in urban area, they have not been occupied for the simple reason they are at a very distant place. So the people have to spend 1.5 hour coming from that place. They have to spend time, they have to spend money, and what for they are there. So ultimately they don't go there. Even if they go there, they lock it, they come back and start living in slums. So you have to be very careful when you are citing affordable housing. Make sure they are not very far off, they are very close, they are close to the place of work, and then they have adequate transportation and affordable transportation available, so that they can be ferried from one place to another, and they can go. And then also you should make sure that they have all the basic amenity, that education, healthcare, recreation, childcare, shopping, etc., that's provided as part of the development, so that they don't have to go from one place to another to fetch even the basic needs. Then you have to have a very well defined, transparent, and objective guidelines, so that please to make sure that only those people get the house who really deserve it. In India, what is happening, majority of you look at the slums, half of the people who are in slums, they are government employees, or they are very well off. They are not deserve not to be there, but still they are there. And in most of the cases, you find they are the beneficiary. So ultimately, you are not able to fulfill the total demand, and you are not able to bridge the gap between demand and supply. So therefore, the most important aspect remains, you have to identify right beneficiary, and you have to make sure he doesn't get house here and he doesn't get another house anywhere, and five people in the family own five houses. That's what in Indian people do, and that's what they do ultimately, illegal transfer and sale of goods, and that's what is to be avoided. So ultimately, housing, we have to basically have very clear guideline in identifying beneficiary, and only people who deserve need to be identified and provided. Then you have to use PPP model for affordable housing. You have to create revolving funds, so the money gets involved. You have to involve all beneficiary, public private sector who are involved in the providing of the housing, so that that you are able to meet the basic needs of the housing itself. So both sides you have to. There is a one demand side, there is a supply side. Demand side is what the people who want the houses. Supply side is what the government or the private sector, that they are there. So you have to look at both the problems of demand side and supply side. The supply side people, the private sector you involved, they said we need a cheap land. We need basically all affair, we need all relaxation, everything, Huh? And then the government, basically is also supplying. Government is trying to get what, government is trying to demand housing, that we should have adequate housing for the people who are going to be there. So therefore, I think that mismatch, the supply side want all these roadblocks and all those problem like they face in approval, building bylaws, in the taxes, etc. They need, or they need these building bylaws, they need all relaxation so that they can create maximum number of houses in a given area at the minimum cost, and they can sell it off and make maximum money, because the private sector is not doing a charity. They are here for making money, and they want to make maximum money, and they want the government to all give all the benefits. But the government has to show, the money which they pass on is ultimately utilized for creating housing for the EW section, and at the affordable cost. And the second job of the government is to identify right beneficiary, so that only those people get the benefits, and then they have to make sure the money is available at the affordable cost, so that the houses can be constructed. So these are the things which need to be taken care of. And ultimately, that in the master plan, where we have area marked for residential, commercial, industrial institution, there is a dedicated area which should be marked for the EWS housing, so that those area can be acquired and then they can be used. Then rental housing has to be done on a large scale, which the government of India is now doing, because in pandemics you found, most of the people had to leave for the simple reason they could not pay the rent because they were off the job. And the owners, they didn't accept it, and they asked them, kicked them out, and people had to run. And you could see how people were going, walking even 1,000 kilometers, to go to their place, because there had no place to stay, no money to work at. So therefore, the government has now launched on large scale rental housing in the larger city, so that the people, at least when there is this kind of situation, they are not kicked out, or they are not asked to run away from this, and that they don't face these kind of things, and there is no that kind of migration going back to the villages that they need. And then we have to make the building affordable, and you can reduce the cost of the housing through your design intervention. You can have, design efficiency, high degree of design efficiency, a very efficient structural system. You have, cost effective material. You used prefabrication. Combine all those, the public health services, that sharing, the idea of sharing and collaborating, that can go a long way to cut down the cost of this. And the model is, if you have 15 to 3,500 number of units, 15 to 35 acres of land within 20 to 25 kilometers of a big city, and you provide variety of housing, one room, one BHK or two BHK, with the area ranging from 250 to 500. It's a walk-up apartment going ground +3 to ground +4, and you provide the basic amenities of school education, healthcare, shopping, etc. part of the project. They have been proved to be successful. So I said, Government of India, for meeting the housing demand, they have launched the project of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. This is both for urban and rural, It's a Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana urban as well as for rural. And what they are trying to, they are giving, four kind of things, that there are in situ development. There are for then, one thing, wherever the people are sitting, do you develop that land and use land as a resource, provide the pakka houses at that place, and there are additional houses which are there that can be sold off, and the money can be recovered. And the government gives 1 lakh rupee as a, the subsidy for construction of the houses. In case of abroad, if you want to construct a house, you are doing it. You borrow a money from the bank, and the government will subsidize your loan component. The loan will be, the rate of interest will be capped at 6.5%, and the additional whatever 9 to 10% the bank are charging, 3.5% will be paid by the government. Thirdly, the private sector, they can come, they can buy their land, they can create affordable housing, but the rule is they have to provide minimum 35% of the housing at EWS housing. So they have to give on a prescribed rate and prescribed cost of prescribed design, and rest they are able to sell it off, and they get around 1.5 lakh as one of the subsidy. And the free selling component they can only do after they give back these 35% at the cost which the government has fixed. Last is, if you are constructing your own house, you have a land, you want to construct a house, then the government gives you a, you know, 1.5 lakh rupees for construction of houses in stages. That first you start doing the construction from your own cost, and then ultimately when you reach at plinth level, they give you more money. So the government monitors it, and ultimately for when you complete the total house, you get 1.5 lakh of rupees in 4 installment. And this is all done by geotagging. You have to get it registered, government monitors it, and they make sure that you get money only after you complete the total money, 1.5 lakh for the house, as is a part of the government contribution for the construction of the house, huh, when the house becomes complete. So these are the four verticals which are there, and the government, has launched also a technological submission. And what is technological submission? They are inviting all, they have invited already the companies, and they have involved IITs, NITs, SPAs, that which state can partner to choose best of the global technology which can help you in creating housing in the shortest possible time, in most cost effective manner, while maintaining the quality, etc., and also requiring minimum of labor. These houses are very innovative. They are earthquake and disaster resistant, but they have high input of technology, which is the prime focus of the government for making this housing. Already, few technology have been selected, and they are using the government as adopting as a role model. They want to create those kind of through those technology, those models, uh, to make people learn, because the number of units you can think of. Earlier government was thinking, I said the projected shortage was 26 million dwelling unit, whereas the government is now accepting that it will has to be 1 million. That means they will be constructing only 10 lakh housing, but housing will be requiring as the cities grow, as the urbanization grows on a larger scale. So I will conclude, that if what should be our approach, that we have to treat shelter as a matter of right. That means everybody must have affordable shelter to live in. Secondly, we have to treat affordable housing as a volume game, not a profit game. We have to separate right to shelter from right to ownership of shelter. We have to create multiple options for the shelter, and we have to, rather than area-based approach in the projects, that means house should have that much area. If you have a volume-based approach, means you can cut down the height and you can have more number of units, So that will help you in making the housing affordable. And then, you focus on affordable living rather than affordable housing, and have a project approach based approach. Look at the life cycle cost of the building instead of the initial cost of the building. So when you look at the entire context of the role and importance of housing, housing is one basically activity which can create and expand large jobs in the market, both for skilled and unskilled. And let me tell you, and even for rural migrants, Let me tell you, globally, after First and Second World War, when there were total destruction, the countries were, in crisis, and they were economic depression. They used housing as a mechanism, because I said in housing you can get a lot of employment. Secondly, 290 industries are required to produce the component for making the housing. So that revived the employment, that revived the basically the industry, and then they that housing helped people countries to come out of the recession. So the housing can go revitalize Indian industry, promote economy, have higher growth rate, and marginalize poverty. And you can't, I can say that no city can be made smart unless you have housing for all available to everything. So you can make cities smart, you can make them more productive, more efficient, more livable, more healthier, and more organized, more planned, if you have provide housing for all. This is the image I share. I am closing with few images. This was the image of Hong Kong in 1960. You can see, and this is what Hong Kong is today. This is what slums of England in 1800, when Great Fire of London destroyed, and Great Plague of London destroyed London. And today these are the slum area where the those people are housed. And this is what Singapore next door to us, which is quoted as example in 1960. They were worse than what Indian cities are, but this is what Singapore is today. Surely what I say, if they can do it, we can also do it. But only context remains is, as professional, what we can do and we need to do, that will remain very, very important. So our role, our contribution, our everything will be very, very important if we want, this affordable housing to become a reality. All said and done, all what I have tried to communicate, there are few ideas, there are few basically things which I'm placing before you based on my limited experience and knowledge. And I hope you will think about this, that how things can go ahead, but nevertheless, that you will require housing for all as one of the basic necessity and basic essential commodity of the human beings on the human being. Thank you very much. Thank you. You have a question, please let me know, and I'm here to answer those questions. Amit, I have finished.
Thank you so much, sir. Are you getting my voice?
Yes, I'm getting.
Okay, okay, sir. So thank you, participants, for the patient listenings. If you are having any query, you are kindly request most welcome. You can unmute your mic and you can ask anything. If you are having any problem, anything, any query, anybody, because this is our last session of this 5 days STC, and after that we will have the validation session with us. So
Hello.
you are kindly requested to ask if you are having any query. Madan Sharma ji.
Hello. हाँ जी. Good afternoon, sir. बहुत अच्छा. I enjoyed this presentation. Well focused and very nice. Although I have heard your presentations previous also, but this was also very good. My
Thank
small
you.
question is like this. You told that the constructions and buildings and whole plan should be based on whole life cycle analysis, LCA basis. Its cost should include operational as well as the cost, totality, and you must think that the whole construction should involve from cradle to cradle, or say from beginning to end of salvage, and everything should include. But if we consider the operation, we want to reduce the operational cost in a house or in a building, automatically the construction cost goes up. So that is a very tough kind of situation. How to reduce that? How to reduce 89 to 90% of the part? What are the ways to reduce that?
In fact, if you logically look at this, The initial cost, what we say is green building. A green building costs hardly 4 to 5% more, But a green building reduces your electricity bill by 30%. By your water bill again 30%, That's one simple method, Secondly, you use material which are having less maintenance and less upkeep, And I said if you use material in the natural form, locally available, you will be able to cut down the cost. You look at Chandigarh. You belong to Chandigarh or what it is?
Yes, sir.
You
Yes,
belong
sir.
to Chandigarh?
Yes, sir.
You look at Chandigarh, all the government housing, what they did, they did use the bricks. You see the bricks, and the
Yes,
bricks
sir.
are never painted or plastered. All the outside bricks are kept in the natural form, So there is no maintenance of the bricks. They are in the natural form. Number two, that time these woodwork and the glass, they were 7 times more expensive than the brick. So what they did, in order to reduce the cost, what they did reduce the opening size and made sure that the cost of the house is reduced. Thirdly, they did not use this concrete for the roof. They used the battens and the beams, and they were all constructed. They just put in, and that was constructed. I wish I could share with you the Chandigarh experiment with low cost housing right in 1951. What they did, and they were able. You can't believe it if you look at this. All these 11 type houses they are constructed within 200 to 2500 रुपए में construct किया गया था. These houses were not, to be lasting about 25 to 30 years, but they were constructed in 50. Still after 70 years, you can see they are standing, they are doing the job, And you see the secretary, I quoted the example of Secretariat High Court, The concrete, when they were constructed in 60, only after 60 years, now when UNESCO has declared as a World Heritage Site, they are now cleaning the concrete, So had those concrete been painted, plastered and then painted, you can see that what could have been the cost. So the mechanism remains: use material which are local, number one, use material in the natural form, use material which require minimum maintenance and upkeep. And if you can do the green building, I can do wonders. That's the only way. I think you have a lot of, as an engineer, you can understand what could be the option, what kind of material you require. If you can have cheaper material, but if that material, after 4 or 5 years have to be replaced, that means the cost of the house will go up, So therefore, you have to think of material which are longer lasting. You can see the Parliament of the Indian Parliament. You can see, they have not even removed the cladding. What the cladding they have done. Had they done anything else, instead of that, any plastering or the parliament would have all been painted, and every time they would have been busy. But since the painting has been done, this cladding has been done, that stone has withstood the test of the time, and it doesn't require that kind of maintenance even after, those you can say around 100 years when they were constructed. That's the only thing. But am I clear,
Thank
sir?
you, sir.
Madan Sharma ji, are you getting the voice?
Yeah, sir. Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
very much.